At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
There are few things more devastating than mental illness. As awful as it is for the person affected, watching a friend or loved one struggle through a temporary or long-term crisis is one of the scariest things any of us can experience. While there have been many advances in medicine, most come during an era where society has struggled in providing mental health services to those most in need. Treatment is complicated, costly, and forces us to confront fundamental questions about individual rights and social responsibility. Joining us today in partnership with the American Leadership Forum are Sister Libby Fernandez, Executive Director of Loaves and Fishes, Michael Azar, Executive Director of TLCS, and Nancy Weaver-Teichert, who has directly experienced navigating our mental health system on behalf of a close friend. Sister Libby, I have a question. Why is it that dealing with mental health issues seems to be one that we all recognize how important it is, but we can't seem to ever come together around doing a program or coming up with a plan to really address the need in a meaningful way?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Scott, mental illness affects every family, whether you're homeless, rich, raised in East Sac or living on the streets in Sacramento. Homelessness, mental illness affects everyone. And so, first of all, the issue is so broad, from people who have severe paranoid schizophrenia to post-traumatic stress disorders. So the gamut of different types of mental illness is so broad. And then it affects the families, the advocates, your neighborhood so broadly and so many different issues.
I don't understand, Michael, why we can't seem to get it together though, because it seems as if that when you talk to people individually, no matter what their political persuasion, their religious affiliation, their standing in life, people get it. But year after year, we seem to do nothing about the problem.
Well, I think we're doing something about the problem. The problem is that it's growing on an exponential basis. More and more people are having more severe symptoms, and it's difficult to keep up with it, especially in tough financial times when there isn't enough money to go around.
Does the recession, people blame things on the recession. They say, well, there have been cuts. But was it really that great, Nancy, before the recession?
I don't think it's been that great since we more or less turned mentally ill people onto the street to fend for themselves.
Back in the Reagan era when
Right.
we closed all the mental
the
hospitals.
I think there were probably a lot of people in hospitals who shouldn't have been there. But everyone was kind of thrown out with the idea that there would be these local clinics that would be funded to provide them with services. And we all know what happens when the buck is passed. And so I think what's happened is that you have people with a range of mental health issues that are all out there in the community, and they all need services that are not, they need services for their specific situation. And the system is terribly difficult to navigate for people that are, especially people with mental illness problems.
Well, and Sister Libby, you deal with people on a daily basis. Actually, Michael, you do as well. But Sister Libby, in dealing with the homeless population, these folks have less resources than anyone else. And I'm curious, what happens to people out on the street when they do need mental health care today?
Oh, it's wrenching. Because even at Loaves and Fishes, we're a safe, welcoming environment for anyone who needs our services. So we see 600 to 800 homeless and poor guests each day. 65% of them have mental illness.
65%.
65% of those whom we see on a daily basis have some level of mental illness. So even if a person wanted help, psychiatric services, medication, in order for that person to receive it, cannot happen overnight. You first must get into the system, navigate the system. So once you get into maybe guest house, which is a county-operated opportunity for homeless people to try to access medical and psychiatric services, you can be seen that day, but it takes now 3 to 4 months before you can actually get the appointment for a mental health assessment with a psychiatrist. So you're not even going to get your medications until you meet with the psychiatrist.
Yeah, they've been trying to improve the intake process at Guest House. Right now they have a orientation where somebody can go in, learn about the services, but then they have to schedule an appointment, which could take 1 or 2 months, and then, like Sister Libby said, it could take time after that before they can see a doctor.
If I could jump in there, because I was trying to help this friend of mine who is this wonderful young woman. I first met her through Big Brothers Big Sisters. I was her big sister when she was 14, and now she's almost 40. And when she was in high school, she started to develop mental health problems. And she suffers from seizures, borderline personality disorder, multiple suicide attempts. She's had a terribly difficult time. And we went to Guest House to try to find her some housing, because she called me 2 days before Christmas and said she didn't want to have our annual Christmas celebration because she didn't want me to feel sorry for her because she was going to move on to the river, that she didn't have a place to live anymore. And so we get up bright and early, we're second in line at Guest House, and start filling out the questionnaire. And we were pulled out, and it was explained to us, a county rule that none of the people in line would know about, and I didn't know about, is if you're receiving mental health services from one agency, you're ineligible to go to any of the others.
Really?
Yes.
Now, share with us, what exactly is Guest House? You've mentioned that a couple
It's
times.
a nonprofit, it's part of the El Hogar agency, and they are the front door for homeless mentally ill. The county contracts with them to provide the intake for people who are homeless with a severe and persistent mental illness.
And if people are being served by another agency, they're precluded from receiving any
In the
care?
case of Nancy's, they're being seen by WellSpace Health, and because they either have insurance or have another mental health provider, they can't be part of the county mental health plan.
Well, she was being seen and is being seen by the Effort, and they're providing her with psychiatric counseling. But the Effort does not provide housing. So we went through several different agencies, getting up first thing in the morning, being first or second in line through 3 or 4 different agencies, and we were unable to find a place for her.
How long did you spend trying to do this?
It was about 3 weeks.
3 weeks
Right.
of consistent effort.
And me telling the agency that she is either homeless today or on the verge of being homeless.
Sister Libby, what is the relationship between being homeless and access to mental health care and getting actually into a treatment program?
For an average person with mental illness who actually can walk those steps, navigate themselves, like Mike said, and even Nancy, it could take 3 to 4 weeks just to get an appointment. So that's why you probably see a lot of people who are homeless on the streets. Could be on the corner of 20th and J Street because they feel safe there. At night, they don't get harassed, they feel safe. All the night shelters are full, and even for a mentally ill person to go in a night shelter could be very chaotic and not feel safe.
Really?
So with people with mental illness, there's a real sense of need to feel safe, and so therefore often they're on the streets at night by themselves before they can actually access any kind of appointment to a psychiatrist and housing. That takes months. It takes months, and we just don't have enough affordable housing with supportive services. We have lots of apartments and openings in Sacramento, and many people who have disabilities have enough income possibly to pay for rent. But it's really about that supportive help that people with mental illness need. Case management, help to keep consistent with their medications, call the doctor to get your monthly medications, to really stay focused on taking care of yourself and your well-being with the support of someone else. Nancy's a great example of where we need to go. We need
And that was the
personal
big
navigators.
That was the big problem we had, is that she saved up 2 months for the first month's rent on an apartment we found that she could afford. And she was very excited about it and wanted to have the kind of life she sees everyone around her having. But she needs help in maintaining that life. She needs help in establishing it and maintaining it with her mental illness. I think we tend to think of mental illness as something that people, drug and alcohol addicts, we don't realize that there are people that it's like cancer, it's like anything else, it is an illness. And we're just letting these people fend for themselves in a situation that is impossible for them to manage.
Are any of you aware of any models for this type of supportive services you're describing, where it is that a person doesn't live in a facility where there's, 4, 10, whatever people living there, but it's more sort of scattered?
Well, an example is our New Direction Full Service Partnership, which is funded through county funds from Mental Health Services Act money. And we do a whatever it takes approach. So if somebody gets into the system, and that's the big part of it, either coming in through homelessness, through the guest house, or through access at the county Division of Behavioral Health, and then they come into our program, they see our psychiatrist, our nurse, they get their medication support. We work with them on finding housing. Our case managers go to them where they live and work on their life plans, make sure they get to their different appointments, and then they do get that support. But unfortunately, our agency serves about 1,200 people in that capacity. There are just so many more people who need the service that don't have a chance to get it.
What would you estimate the need is?
It's in the many thousands. I know several years ago when there was a county funding cutback, about 5,000 people lost their services. I don't know what the current numbers are.
Let me just stay with this for a second, because I'd like to know, what is it that both of you as practitioners would like the general public to appreciate and understand about the people that you're trying to help every day that you don't think that they always get?
One is, like Nancy said, it's an illness. It's not something that somebody went crazy. It's an illness, and in many cases it's treatable, in some cases it's not, but they are people who have needs, and they can live independently if they get the right support.
Absolutely, and I think here in Sacramento County, we really do have the answers, and we have the right agencies. We just don't have enough of it.
Yeah.
Really?
TLCS,
Well, go a little bit further on that, because to hear that we have solutions here, I think we'd all like to hear a little bit more.
absolutely. And I've been working at Loaves and Fishes a long time, and it hasn't changed too much. There are at least 1,200 men and women on the streets every night, waiting to get into the services that we provide, waiting to get in night shelters, waiting to get into transitional housing programs and or supportive housing with support.
Right.
They're just waiting for those opportunities. So if we had more housing programs specializing in mental health and supportive services.
Most of the county-funded programs are way over capacity. The regional support teams, the RSTs, most of them are licensed for about 12, or rather contracted for 900 people, and they typically have 1,200 people. Our T-Corps program contracted for 600, we have 750. There are more people that need the services, and we just try to squeeze them in, and when you do that, you have longer wait times to see the doctors. There needs to be more providers and more, a greater linkage. Guest house and access need to have a bigger capacity, but then there needs to be the support at the other end to take those referrals.
All right. Nancy, I want to ask you, in trying to help your friend, what is it you've learned through this experience about how it is? You're a well-educated person who obviously is pretty good at negotiating systems and figuring things out. What is it that you've learned through this experience that surprised you?
Well, it's interesting because I covered social services as a journalist for the Sacramento Bee for years, so I've written about all these agencies, I've written about this problem, but I didn't realize the extent of the problem until I was standing in line with her at yet one other agency, and we were wanting to make an appointment for her to see about getting into some sort of a program that could provide her with the counseling and the case management that she needed. And they said, well, yes, you're number 70. And we said, 70. What do we number 70? And she said, well, there's 69 people ahead of you waiting for appointments. And so I said, how long will that be? And she said, well, it could be a month or two. And that's to get the first appointment, and that's even before the psychiatric appointment. So here she is daily battling these mental illness issues. And so what happens, how it costs you and me as taxpayers more, is that she ends up in jail for forgetting her bus pass, or she ends up in multiple hospitalizations for seizures.
Through the
disorders. The ER. And in fact, one social worker said to me, you know, if you can't wait 1 or 2 or 3 months with a woman who is about to be homeless and who is mentally ill, go to the ER every time she has a health problem, every time she has a seizure or she threatens suicide, and every time you go, tell them she's homeless, and they'll help figure it out. That is a ridiculous waste of everything, a waste of tax money, a waste of expertise of all these people who are ready to treat people who have had car accidents, and here you have somebody who should be in a program that is providing her with ongoing
So
care.
as a former journalist, I have a question for you, and please feel free to jump in. It seems to me, given that ER visits are so expensive, that it would be cheaper for all of the health systems in the region to fund or subsidize something else to keep people from showing up at the ER, because even though that's money out of pocket, it's surely significantly less than how much is spent on the general ER visit. So why hasn't that happened?
Well, it is happening to some extent. There's an emphasis right now on respite programs to get people in crisis. We opened up in December a crisis respite center funded by innovation funds through Sacramento County, and it's a place where people can go who are not quite severe enough to be 5150, where they have to be held because they're a danger to themselves or others, but a place where somebody can go for up to 23 hours to de-escalate the crisis, figure out what's going on, and get them referrals to ongoing services so they can stay out of the ERs.
Now, we've been talking about this a lot from the standpoint of homeless and extremely distressed populations. But mental illness is not an issue just for lower income populations. This is an issue that affects all of us. And even if you have health insurance, mental health care services tend to be rationed out in terms of the number of visits that you can access. Are we as a society really even providing at the level where it is that people have private insurance, the type of support services that are needed for families to be able to address this problem?
Absolutely not. When I was a journalist, there was a woman that I became friends with, and her son was mentally ill and had been mentally ill since he was in college, I think, when schizophrenia afflicted him. And she had resources, insurance, everything. And he exhausted all those, and she was at a loss to figure out what to do. And she would call me in tears and said, you have to write stories about this, because my insurance I've exhausted my insurance. I'm trying to get him in these programs that he doesn't want to go to. Finally, for her, the crisis hit when he was in the county jail, and he set fire to his jail cell.
Really?
And now tell me, I don't think he should have been in jail. I think he should have been somewhere else. But even with all the insurance that she had exhausted, and all the programs that she had tried to work him through, he was still ended up on the street. And I think that having money and having knowledge about how to work the system still does not mean that you can get adequate care for mentally ill in this
Scott,
country.
and you bring up the issue about emergency rooms and crisis. That's where we've come down to it. Why does it always have to be a crisis before we can have adequate services? And so in the way our system works, which can be improved, and this respite, 23-hour respite care is a great start before the crisis happens. So you can actually get 23 hours of, let's not be suicidal, let's not be homicidal, let's work on these very, very severe issues of mental illness. But right now we're reacting, and so we have so many people who end up going to the ERs, any hospital, whether it's Mercy, Sutter, or Kaiser even. If you go to the ER, that's where you go, because that is the only access you have to direct mental health services.
Wasn't there a mental health center at one point in this town?
Yes. Well, see, we used to have, you could go direct access to a mental health treatment center. I used to be able to, because we have a mental health program at Lois and Fisher's Genesis. We have trained therapists who can actually do a 5150 hold on someone with mental illness. And we're talking the same laws that have been going on for years. The laws haven't changed. 5150 means that you're either a danger to yourself, a danger to others, or you're not able to take care of yourself. You don't know where to eat, you don't know how to eat, you don't know who you are. That's the issues we're talking about when it comes to mental health crises, those three significant points. So when that was taken away, that we as trained therapists could not put a 5150 hold and voluntarily enroll a person into the treatment center or have the police.
Let me jump in on you on that point, because I think that that's a really important point. One of the things that is talked about and is a struggle for us as a society is the rights of the individual. And so, Nancy, in your case, you have a friend who suffers from mental illness. Some of us might have a family member or friend that suffers from mental illness. And that person is not making good choices and is having a right to choose not to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And they may become a danger, but it seems that that tripwire is pretty far away. What should be the rights of the individual to deny treatment when they are obviously so much in need of themselves? Because the people who are individual right advocates are extremely strenuous on this point.
Right.
But it's a good point.
Yeah, and that's one of the controversies about Laura's Law. It's been enacted for, I think, 12 years, but Nevada County is the only county that's implemented it. And that
remind us again about
it was a case of a woman named Laura who was a mental health worker who was killed by a client who should have been on or could have been on medications, and they passed a law in the legislature that said that you can force, it's called court-induced treatment, and they have not implemented it in any other counties.
Why not?
Because a lot of people feel that it is the individual's right to decide whether they take the medications.
How do you feel about that, Sister Libby?
You know, I like our laws, and I think we can use them better. And it really is, the laws are really in favor for the protection of the individual, which I agree, but also protection and for the individual to receive services. And if you really look at those 3 points, you're a danger to others. That means you are homicidal. That means you're a threat, that you are really literally going to bodily harm someone. That's clear cut. You need help. So if you can designate that as a purpose of why you need to be forced to have help, I agree with that.
Well, but let me put out the other scenario. What if, we'll talk about family members and friends. What if you're at a point where it is that let's say you have a child, and the child is out on the street and damaging themselves, and it's an adult child. You love the child regardless of whether they have mental illness or not, and you can't force them to do anything. And they're not at the point where they cross the threshold where they're truly a danger to other people. But the thing is that the family itself is about to collapse. They can't, they are stretched, they're gonna lose their jobs, they're about to go bankrupt. And they've got to do something because they spend all their time out on the street looking for their family member. Where's the justice for them?
Well, that's where you feel helpless, but people like Nancy being advocates, that's what people need. Families burn out, you heard of burnout, but we have resources. We have Loaves and Fishes, we have TLCS, we have Guest House, we have new systems like Navigator system. We have a new grant, the Dignity Health Grant, that actually does a partnership with TLCS, Loaves and Fishes Mental Health, 211 information, and also Downtown Partnership to walk that dance with people who need help that are on the streets, who aren't quite 5150-able, but need that extra relationship of trust. Because really, again, it's about the safe environment that the family members want that person to be in and the support they need. We just need more of it. and it's a slow dance, a relationship, to try to walk with someone one-on-one, to get them off of that corner on 20th and J Street and dance towards a better environment to hopefully supportive housing with support services.
And so, Michael, if you have a loved one, or family member, or just a colleague who's in trouble and they really need help, what is the first call that they should make?
If they're homeless, they should go to guest house, call guest house, find out how to get into the orientation program. If they're not homeless, then they should call county access and get online to be referred to one of the mental health agencies. Now, if they have private insurance, they can go through that. But for people who don't have that ability, then going through the county access is the way.
And Nancy, in terms of where it is that what happens next for your friend in our final moments, where does she go from here?
Well, right now she is has worked out an arrangement where her mother, who lives in a senior citizens housing project, they're allowing her to stay there for now. But all of her belongings are in storage. It's not a long-term solution. And she is one of those who is working, you know, she has all these illnesses. She's taking all these medications. She's doing everything they're telling her to do. And she wants to live a normal life.
And we're going to leave it right there. Best of luck to her. And that's our show. Thanks to our guests, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.